searching all my life for treasure and, without realizing it, for true love. I finally found the latter, but it didn't come easily, and it certainly didn't happen in a typical way. I didn't find that coveted gold coin or that silver dollar. But what I did unearth and where I found it just might pull at your heartstrings. The find occurred on a chilly, damp September morning when my good friend from high school, Frank, was visiting me here on the coast of Maine. We were out detecting at an old colonial-era property just up the street from my 1830s farmhouse. Before we reveal the significance of what I unearthed that day, we must first back up the bus all the way back to 1976. It was the bicentennial year, and I was 13 years old. Like many a young boy, I was captivated by the idea of searching for lost treasure. My doting grandmother, Dot, caught wind of this, and the next thing I knew, I was unwrapping a DIY metal detector kit from Radio Shack on my birthday. The weeks that followed, I found myself soldering capacitors, resistors, and other electronic components onto a small circuit board. Soon after completion, the day of reckoning was upon me, but boy was I disappointed, for when I took the detector out and tested it, I could barely pick up anything, let alone the quarter I set on top of the ground. A total failure. Fast forward a couple years and I was over visiting my uncle. He must have known me pretty well, for after not having been in his presence for long, he decided to pull out his new state-of-the-art White's metal detector. The next thing I remember was him offering to loan it to me. I couldn't answer yes fast enough. Thanks, Uncle Tom. Rest in peace. Let me now tell you the part of this story that involves a very sweet and young woman I met online during the COVID debacle back in 2020, Marah Angelyne. Our romance started remotely, and we spent many hours getting to know each other by phone. I found Marah's quirky intellect stimulated my brain. Looking back now, Marah was unknowingly a pro at courting a man. Her inherent shyness, innocence, and the way she always giggled at my marginally funny attempts at humor were intoxicating for me. Marah operates more in the spiritual, or might I say, otherworldly realm. I half-jokingly tell her she cast a spell on me back in 2020. Here's a clip from another one of our videos that will give you a sense of her.
I think from a very early age I would get dreams, and I wasn't necessarily aware of what I was really getting because I grew up in the church. It was frowned upon in a way.
Now let's get back to the metal detecting. So after being loaned a detector by my uncle, I soon realized I wanted to get one of my own. It was also about that time I began hanging around with a friend named Jody in high school. I believe I was in about 10th grade. Jody was perhaps the biggest jokester I'd ever met. And to this day, I still don't know if some of the things he uncovered with his detector had been truly found or simply planted in the ground to annoy me. In that golden age of detecting, when most public locations like old parks, churches, and schools had yet to be searched, I guess anything is possible. But finding a mint condition 1848 seated Liberty silver dollar in the front lawn of an old Quaker Friends meeting house, an old state of New Jersey copper plow and horsehead token found adjacent to the grave of the notorious revolutionary outlaw Moses Doane, oldest of the Doane brothers, and an entire Victorian-era change purse filled with old silver coins were just a few of the finds I remember him making. One day after school, I think Jody may have even gone to the extreme of planting a coin for me to find. He instructed me to try detecting in the dirt floor of his parents' farmhouse in Pennsylvania. He told me exactly where I should search, right by the steps. That seemed odd. It was a very early 1800s large cent. Here is a view of the coin. Judge for yourself. There is no corrosion or any indication that this was in the ground for any period of time. I lost touch with Jody long ago, so it is likely this will all remain a mystery.
I was understanding that if you can focus where your life is in the present, and if you can dream of a future, what would that look like? So I would park there and I would take the stroller out and I would walk around this lake and I would just envision over and over, I will own a house and there will be some land and then there will be a lake behind it. So why is this even important now? That was what, 2015? Fast forward my life in 2021, I end up in Maine owning a house and behind it there's a lake.
Fast forward a couple of years, and I was doing a lot of detecting with Frank and his brother Mike. We had the good fortune of hitting a few great spots before they had been searched out, including an old swim hole where the lost coins were so closely packed together we had to purchase smaller search coils, an untouched summer camp in Maine from the early 1900s, and one crazy late night adventure when we were just 17 that involved camo, black face paint, and headphones to detect an old Quaker meeting house just outside of Philadelphia. That property was from the mid-1700s, and it is where I found my oldest coin, a barely legible 1761 Spanish real. Here's a great story I just had to share. Back in the early 90s, Frank was a new dad and living in Connecticut. I was up for a visit, and we took a half day to head out detecting. Somehow we ended up knocking on the door of a very old home in Litchfield, Connecticut. We got permission to search. By sheer luck, this property was the site where the lead statue of George III had been melted down to make musket balls for the colonial army. The statue had been pulled down by soldiers and sailors immediately following the signing of the Declaration of Independence. The statue was hauled north and melted down by women in Litchfield. As I recall, we located 3 or 4 musket balls in the backyard where the melting and casting had taken place. We showed them to the owner and he kept them. Hopefully they made it into a museum. All we have is the memory. Metal detecting does not come without disappointment and countless days of striking out. If you don't believe me, be sure to watch one of my favorite TV series of all time, The Detectorists. Some classic detecting disappointments include digging up what you imagine to be that diamond ring and instead uncovering yet another aluminum pull tab, or endlessly sifting through soil to find that dreaded rusty nail, or digging that seemingly bottomless hole only to discover that hunk of white lead or iron that somehow fooled the discrimination setting on the detector. So why do we detectorists stay at it, you ask? What have you found that makes it worthwhile? Well, the first question is easy. I believe detectorists are all optimists at heart. The thrill of the unknown overwhelms the logical brain. Very similar to fishing. You never know for sure what you're going to catch. In this case, one of many very nice stripers here in Maine, but that will be another video. So what am I swinging these days, you fellow detectorists may be asking? Well, a couple of years ago when my old whites decided to stop booting up, I made the investment in a Minelab Equinox 800. I've been very happy with it so far. In fact, let me share a quick example of just how robust this unit is. A couple of years ago, Frank and I were detecting out at an old ferry landing here on the coast of Maine. It soon became evident that the site had been thoroughly searched out, but we were determined to find something. Frank had already recently acquired the Equinox 800, and when his unit sounded off a high tone in the dime range, I told him he needed to dig it. Pay dirt. Unbelievably, what he uncovers were 2 adjacent coin spills about 4 inches apart, one from the very early 1900s and one from the 1930s. My theory is that other detectorists with less superior instruments ignored this reading, as it would most likely have registered as a big hunk of junk.
So 16 inches approximately in that hole, by the way, it's a beautiful hole, nice cylinder I dug, was this thing. And Al was heckling me saying, I can't believe you're still digging that hole, but it was a good sound. And it's a bronze handle, like a copper construction. Might have got it with a big trowel. Look how deep that hole is. Crazy.
This is something I found at a friend's meeting house in the Philadelphia area back probably around late 70s. It's a bracelet identification. The person's name was Judy Miles. Pilot's wings, little pin, sterling. This coin is one of my best coins. The date on this is 1816. It was down about 9 inches deep, behind where an old hotel was, near where the old clay tennis court was, but this was far older than the hotel. Given the almost mint condition of this coin, It was lost probably in the early to mid-century of the 1800s, and I don't know what it was doing out there. At first I thought I had a Roman coin, because I'm not very familiar with British coins. These were items that my son Coleman and I found down at an old resort in the Catskill Mountains in New York, long abandoned. Gold pocket watch. This was found at a summer camp in Maine, here in the state of Maine, a long time ago, probably late 70s again. Pulled a lot of stuff out of this one location. This is solid gold, but the innards are all corroded out. Quaker Friends meeting. Jug was a dog. I belonged to Curtis Hanners, Falsington, Pennsylvania. There's his address long ago. Dog's long gone. This was a Freemason's pin. This was an identification pin. It was for insurance purposes. These were apparently popular starting back in the 1930s. This is a mourning locket. This was in memorial of a gentleman or a child perhaps, but it says Frank on it. And I'm not going to open this again, but when we opened this after we found it, actually inside is hair, human hair. It is still intact. It was kind of gross, to be perfectly honest with you, so we closed it back up, but there was a clear glass viewing section that folded out, and in behind that was the hair. This was common in the mid to later 1800s. Mourning lockets were worn by those in mourning of a loved one. That's 14 karat gold. These are 3 rings. This was found in Pennsylvania. It was a Quakertown High School solid gold ring. The odd thing about these rings is that they're all from 1938. I've only ever found 3 class rings, and they're all 1938. I've never been able to try to figure out what that means. Maybe it's just a total fluke, but it is very odd. I've only ever found 3 class rings, and they're all the same year. The middle one was found at that summer camp in Maine, and then the far right one, Lafayette College ring. Atop of a pillbox, sterling, no bottom, just the top. Pretty interesting little design on that. I think I found that at Washington Crossing State Park years ago. Very old button, might even be colonial period, or if not 1800s. A Revolutionary War colonel was the original owner of that property. These are Civil War mini balls. This one you can see was like partially crushed. This one struck something head on and was flattened out. In the center here, this was my kind of prized find. And where we found these, my friend Frank and I and our other friend Bob, we went down to Antietam battlefield. We were, of course, not on the battlefield. That's totally illegal. But we were on an adjacent farm property that was owned by a farmer down there who we went and door knocked. And he said, sure, no problem. You can search our fields. And we were out in his field areas that were, off to the side of where the battle was. Now these rounds traveled quite a ways and landed in his field, and we uncovered them. It was really exciting to do that and really appreciate that gentleman all those years ago, probably 30 years ago now when we went down there. The story with Antietam was it's the single bloodiest day in American military history. There were 22,000 casualties between killed, wounded, and missing from the two sides combined. So that one 24-hour period, I believe it was September 17th, 1862, was claimed a Northern victory strategically. It's one of my favorite places to visit. You would think of all the bloodshed that it would be just very eerie, but instead it's incredibly peaceful and tranquil. So now we get to the juicy part, the culmination of the love story. What happened? Well, on that damp September morning, while Frank was searching up closer to the old homestead, I was further out in the front yard along the driveway when my unit sounded off with a slightly high-pitched, tight sound. Depth was only a couple of inches. I'm thinking aluminum. A minute later, I'm wiping off something very different, an antique silver ring with a pink stone. Now this is the part of the story where the romantic element reveals itself. Marah and I had been together for a couple years, but neither of us were thinking about marriage at the time. Anyway, time passes, and then this fall, my friend Kim talks to me and asks me if I still have that ring that I found 2 years ago. I think Kim is quite the romantic, and she went on to say to me, Al, what woman wouldn't want something that her man unearthed from the ground? So that got me thinking. This compelled me to start doing research on the ring. I was thinking that the stone was one found locally in Maine, tourmaline. I learned that pink tourmaline had been popular for engagement rings in lieu of a diamond back in the 1930s when times were tough. I was pretty confident this was the stone. A few days later, Marah and I make the decision to spend the rest of our lives together. We discussed the ring being her engagement ring, and to my surprise, she liked the idea. Just a few weeks later, we head to the big city, Bangor, Maine. We want to find out more about the ring. This is when the story takes a very odd twist. It has some age to it, I think. It says sterling.
Yeah, I think the edges, I think it's plastic, but...
The stone?
Isn't that funny?
Oh my God. Jesus, Mark.
Hey, you know,
Unearthing love. What did I unearth?
glass.
Bubblegum ring from the 1950s? What is this thing?
Yeah, you know, I still like it, to be honest.
I still like it.
I think it could be, you know, size.
They're not even able to fix it there.
I know, but listen, we're okay.
Yeah. Finally, for me, one of the other great things about my metal detecting hobby is that I have been able to share it with my boys. Owen and Coleman, twins who are now 18, have been experiencing detecting with me in various locations for several years. It all started for them on our cross-country trip in the summer of 2016 when they were 10. While in the Black Hills area of South Dakota, I made the point of heading off into the now mostly defunct gold mining district. As it turned out, we ended up in a very remote and deserted area. The end of the road was Rochford, a town of less than 10 inhabitants. This kind woman who owned the local saloon even let us search behind her house. We also tried some old tailing piles, the rock that is removed from the mine shafts. No luck. One last desperate run took us too close to an ongoing gold mine. The stern signage finally got me turned around. I think we had all had a bit of gold fever. When the boys reached their teens, we cooked up a flyer to leave at old homes in the Philadelphia area, looking for permission to detect. We did get a couple of takers. At one of those spots, Owen detected the gold mourning locket with the hair in it, along with several other antiquities and coins. Coleman pulled out several silver coins from an abandoned resort in the Catskill Mountains. Both boys were with me when we made some good coin finds at an old Pennsylvania farmhouse and when we visited our ancestor Enos Benner's print shop in Montgomery County, Pennsylvania from the early 1800s. The new owner was gracious enough to show us around and allowed us to detect in the backyard. Unfortunately, that search didn't turn up anything. It feels good to share my passion with these fine young men, and the hobby is a great bonding activity for road trips as well as a great history lesson. The boys are attending college in South Carolina, and our next outing is targeting all the history of that region. There's one upsetting subject I now decided to share, as perhaps this video could somehow reach the person who wronged me. As you can see in these photos, my hundreds of days of metal detecting in my younger years had rewarded me with a considerable number of silver coins. Since 1979, I have kept them in this binder. Here you can see a list starting with the silver half dollars and then all the quarters I had found. Back around 2005, when I sold my home in Philadelphia, one of the movers presented me with a binder. He told me he had found it under the dresser in the spare bedroom. A few days pass, the move out is over, and then as I am going through my things, I remember the coin binder and decide to open it. I couldn't believe my eyes. The sheets with the half dollars and quarters are all gone. It felt like someone had stabbed me in the stomach and then repeatedly twisted it. To this day, I am not sure who lifted my collection that took me years of searching to accumulate. Disgruntled girlfriend? House guest with sticky fingers? Perhaps a sneaky mover? I will most likely never find out. It's not the value of the coins that trouble me. It's the loss of the history, the time, and the memories that vanished with that one selfish decision someone else made 20 years ago. The best coin of the bunch was an 1898 O Barber half dollar. I seem to remember finding it at an old church here in Maine. It was in very good or fine condition. It would now be worth close to $300.
Listen. I want to talk to you, Al.
I know, but I have to be mic'd. You don't understand.
But you're talking to me like an interviewer.
That's all right.
No, I want to talk to Al. I knew about you before I ever met you. So I knew because I had a Vedic astrologer do my birth chart, Joni Patri, and I don't know if it was 2018 or 2019, and she said a beautiful planet was coming into my house of marriage. She's like, if you haven't moved yet, by 2021 you definitely are going to move because it's going to be based on a relationship. So I basically was told about you before I ever met you. And I was actually disappointed to hear that I would fall back in love after having such a nightmarish first round at it. Because I've been down the conspiracy hole, I also went down the diamond conspiracies and how, you know, basically the Hollywood industry, movie making business helped the diamond industry by blowing up the price. Wow. Because apparently back then people didn't surprise people. This was all orchestrated through television, through movie making. So back then people would wear like a simple, you know, gold, silver ring, and the to-be wife would go shopping with the guy because people were more frugal back then. Sure.
Knowing that Marah loved the ring more because it identifies with me and my passions, and the story of it coming from across the street from her house is more important than the value of the ring. Marah is not in it for the material possessions. She is a spiritual creature who goes much deeper. Like I always say, I'm a blessed man. In summary, metal detecting is not about money. I've made hundreds of excursions and probably spent thousands of hours swinging my loop across the ground. I've done this for close to 45 years and at this point have little to show for it financially. It's not about what you find, it's about the thrill of the unknown, the historical significance of your finds, and the never-ending quest. It's also about the camaraderie that develops into lifelong friendships, bonding with your children, and in my case, unearthing my true love. If it means dusting off the detector to get out there on that cold, dreary day, or checking your dating app one more time, I encourage you all to persevere. The thrill of the unknown and what lies beyond is worth your time. I promise you, it's out there and nothing good comes easy. In closing, I'd like to thank all those kind people who shared their properties with myself, Frank, our friends, and my boys to search. We truly appreciate it.
Got a few pennies, like over in there, and we coming by to the old steps.
No, that's nothing. That's not a good read.
44. Oh my God!
What is that? What is that? Pull it out really. What is that? Silver. Pull it out really carefully. Careful, careful, careful. Oh my God, no way. Hold it over here.
What is this?
That is a, hold it still.
I can't.
That's a seated Liberty silver dollar.
1841?
What the hell?
Let's see if the back's good. Did I hit it? with my trowel.
You didn't hit it at all.
Oh my God, the back is so good.
We've had a brief thaw here in Maine, so I'm out here to do a brief demonstration of the Minelab Equinox 800. It's about 35 degrees, so I'm getting chilly, so I'm going to try to keep moving. Basically, these are the tools of the trade. I've got the detector itself, which you see here. Here's the video screen that I can see all the readouts. Here's the shaft that's adjustable in length. And then the search loop. There are different search loops. I just use the standard loop. This is the pair of headphones that came with the unit. I always wear my headphones because it doesn't disturb people around me. I can hear the sounds and the readings better. It also just is a lot nicer way to go. Like, you know, it keeps people from coming up to kind of bug you, like, what's that sound? And they come trying to find what the sound is. So I'm not going to connect them now because I want you all to hear the sound I'm hearing when I boot it up and then when I do like a ground balance. I've planted something in the ground and we're going to demonstrate how this will react to that. So I'm going to first just turn the unit on. I'm in the coin and jewelry mode. I'm just going to hit the gear setting and then I'm going to hit the check. I'm going to... Now that's basically where it's now set, ready to detect. So I'm in the coin and jewelry mode. I've already got some preset discrimination numbers so I can cancel out certain things like nails and iron. And there is an iron button on here. So if you want to confirm something is iron when you find it, you press the iron button. And if you're still picking it up, it's not going to be iron. So let's just sweep the detector. I've already searched. We're out in the front yard of my 1830s farmhouse here. I've already searched this pretty darn hard and found a couple silver dimes and a couple of those sleigh bells. So I planted something just to get a readout and you know, just wanted to show you how I'll sweep. Now here I'm picking up an 1112. I'm not going to dig that because I can barely dig. It's thawed out only an inch or two down, but you can just hear I'm going to let this go a little and you hear the chatter. Well, picked up my headphones. So we're going to work our way over here. There's the reading I wanted. As I pass over this particular coin that I buried, that's a reading that I'd be really excited about in the field because in both directions, I'm getting the shovel a little bit that way. I'm getting you hear that kind of high pitched, tight sound, and it's hitting 29, 30, 31. I used to use a hand trowel. This is far superior. It's actually a trowel with a large trowel with a long steel handle on it. There's a lot of companies that make these things, but it's so convenient. You can be standing up. You can still dig a tight plug. I think most detectorists that are really into their craft these days are using this type of tool. I've already kind of pre-dug this because it was pretty frozen. So I'm going to come in here now, and then what I would do is once I get this open, we don't want to see what's in the hole just yet. So we're going to cover that up for a second. There's something down in there. I'm going to turn this on. Okay, so this was a separate item I bought. I think it was like 90 bucks. This is a Minelab unit, but this is a probe. And this basically, when I started out detecting years ago, we didn't have these things. But in the last 5 to 10 years, these have become popular. This helps you pinpoint, or a pinpointer they call it, pinpoint where the find that you're trying to locate is located. So a lot of times you'll go sweeping around the hole, not picking up anything there. Then as I move down in, oh, there it is. Now let's pull it out because I've already got it excavated out. This happens to be a silver quarter, 1950. But the probe's great because, you know, if it's in the sidewall or it's somewhere else, or it's deeper, you'll be able to pick it up with the probe. So I highly recommend getting one of these. But that's just a quick little tutorial on how metal detectors work. And, you know, hopefully this was helpful. Oh, it's still on.